Story 1. I saw the sun dimming in an unnatural way in 2013. I distinctly remember this day because it felt so bizarre. In late 2012, I moved to North Florida to take my first job out of college. I moved to a very small town with just north of 10K people living there. In the summer of 2013, my job would send me driving to some really far-off areas. I would take drives to towns of about 1K people. North Florida isn't what people typically think of when they think of Florida. It's really rural, really country, and there are some areas where the towns are so far apart that you can drive 30+ minutes through the woods without seeing a single gas station, a single shop, a single home, and sometimes not even a single car. One hot summer afternoon in 2013, I was driving to Steinhatchee, Florida, on one of those roads where it's just trees to the left and trees to the right. Super hot summer day. One of those brutal, humid, sweltering summer days in Florida that people don't talk about, where it hits the mid-90s, with a heat index of 100 to 105 F. Bright blue sky without a cloud in sight. It's actually quite beautiful when you don't have to be outside. If you've been in North Florida, you know exactly the summer day I'm describing, where it's so hot that you don't even see people walking around in towns. I distinctly remember driving down the road and noticing the lighting change. I thought it was a cloud. Just didn't think much of it. Maybe 10 seconds later I realized it wasn't getting slightly dimmer like a cloud covering the sun. It looked more like a flickering of the lighting. I can't explain it. The best I can explain it is as one of those old halogen flashlights from the 80s and early 90s, where the connection isn't quite tight enough, so any motion of the flashlight makes the flashlight lose a little bit of the brightness but doesn't fully go out. It stopped for maybe up to a minute, and then it started again. I remember it looking weird and shadowy on the road, just very unnatural. I remember looking up at the sun through my windshield, in my polarized sunglasses, and it was flickering, like the sphere of the sun itself was flickering. Not a single cloud in sight. It's like it was losing power, like the flashlight example I gave. It was just a startling thing to look at, so I pulled over on the side of the road and looked up. This bizarre flickering kept up on and off for minutes. I didn't count, but it felt like maybe on and off for 2 to 3 minutes, with the intensity of the darkness getting noticeably more intense toward the end. There were several gaps of maybe 20 to 30 seconds when nothing was happening. I couldn't sustain looking at it at any point because it was still a bright sun in my eyes. What's weird is that when a cloud covers the sun in this intense North Florida heat, the shadow feels like a relief from the heat. It drops a few degrees on your skin. That was not happening. When it was getting dark from the flickering, it stayed the same brutal temperature. The flickering got wild probably in the last 30 seconds. Way more rapid, way more extreme. With the darkness it was casting, I distinctly remember feeling kind of anxious and uneasy, like I had a sense of doom during that last little bit because it felt so unnatural. It felt something big is happening. I remember being afraid that maybe the sun is dying. This was the only point I could sustain looking at it for longer than just a brief glance. But then it just stopped. No more flickering, no more darkness, nothing else weird. The sun just stayed how it was. I got back in my car and just waited in the AC for something to happen again, and it never did. I kept on driving and never saw anything like that again. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. One other detail. When I was outside of my car, I saw someone in a pickup truck drive by. I saw him looking up at the sky, the same way I was when I first noticed. I know someone out there saw the same exact thing I saw because they looked like they were really making it a point to see it. I was just beginning dating my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife. I didn't tell her because I didn't want to come off like I was having a mental health episode or something, lol, but I told her a year or two later because I still think about it to this day. Never experienced anything like this ever again, but it was so trippy that I remember like it was yesterday. Story 2. Lost my favorite lipstick, and when I finally found it, it was unused. This happened just a couple of days ago. For Thanksgiving, my husband and I had went to my parents' house a few hours away and stayed for a few days. I had packed a bag of makeup for our stay, including my favorite lipstick, Fenty Beauty Gloss Balm Stick in Fenty Glow. This lipstick had been purchased on September 14th, plenty of time for me to use it and love it before Thanksgiving. When we came back from Thanksgiving, I unpacked my makeup bag as usual. A couple days after getting back, I went to use my favorite lipstick, and I couldn't find it anywhere. I do have a significant amount of makeup, so I figured it could be lost in all my lipsticks, or maybe I had put it in a purse for an outing, or maybe it fell out in my car. I just remember I had packed it for our Thanksgiving trip. Well over a month passed, and I could never find it. My husband helped me look through my car at our house for it. I almost bought a replacement because I love it so much and was really missing wearing that particular shade. But I thought, as soon as I buy another one, I'm going to find it. Sure enough, I made a purchase at Ulta and resisted the urge to replace it. and the next day I found my favorite lipstick. The lipstick was in the makeup bag I had packed for Thanksgiving, but in a front pocket I don't usually use. I pulled out the lipstick and opened it and was absolutely floored to find it unused. I know it was unused because this type of lipstick has the brand logo stamped into the top of the lipstick. The lipstick formula is very thin, so once you use the lipstick once, the brand stamp disappears. Here was my favorite lipstick, the one I had missed wearing, and it was brand new, not flat, never used. I just sat there trying to think how that is even possible. There is no way, unless I never used the lipstick. But I have memories of using it and loving it. Loving it so much. I was wanting to spend $25 to replace it. I went to show my husband the stamp and everything. He thought it was super weird. I just don't understand how that happened. Feels very much like a glitch in the Matrix. Story 3. Lived in an alternate reality. Not really sure how to title this, but I came here hoping someone might have some insight on my experience. I was 17 years of age at the time, approximately 10 years ago. It was around dinner time, say 4 o'clock. My mother and I were driving to a local burger joint to bring home food for us and my grandparents. Unbeknownst to me, I was about to undergo the experience of a lifetime. We were having a conversation about my sister, who was getting ready to have her first child. I was asking my mom the usual questions. What would the gender of the child be? Had she decided on a name? It was when I gave my mom a chance to reply that I experienced what I did, maybe a few words into my mom's sentence, and suddenly, I am in another life. It was nothing like falling asleep and having a dream. It was seamless, from one existence to the next. I still had a sense of self, like I was still me, but I wasn't me, if that makes any sense. I was suddenly in a completely different setting, and a horrific one at that. Work. What my existence had shifted to was what I could only explain as the storming of Omaha Beach. I was already in the thick of battle, running through water up a beach trying to get to any type of cover that I could. I have no idea what War One was fighting, what era it was, or if it was even on Earth. I had no reason to ask those questions in that reality, the same as you would have no reason to question yourself in this reality. I remember seeing other friendly soldiers all around me. It was an absolute bloodbath. Some being blown up by what I could only assume were artillery or bombing raids. Some getting gunned down trying to run for cover. I remember seeing a bunch of friendly units behind some concrete, maybe a bunker or something, just up the beach a ways, maybe a quarter mile. I remember running for these people, struggling with every step I took, running from water to wet sand to dry sand. I was heavy from not only my gear but being completely soaked as well. I ran as hard as I could to get to cover, and when I finally did, I snapped back to reality. When I was back to this reality, almost no time had passed. My mom was still answering those questions, and we were hardly but a few streetlights closer in the direction we were heading. I sat with my thoughts as my mom continued on. I remembered everything. I didn't speak a word of this to my mom. I didn't speak a word about this to anyone out of fear of sounding crazy or people not believing me. I've spoke with friends about it now, and most people don't really have much to say about this. I'm curious though if anyone here might have some answers to what all of that was. Thanks for reading my story. Story 4. Costco and the berry crates. To set the scene, I was in line to check out, and ahead of me was a couple I would guess were in their 80s. The man had a terrible hunchback that kept him always kind of looking down. They're unloading their cart behind a plastic belt divider. Ahead of the belt divider were items that had not yet been scanned for the people who were ahead of the people ahead of me. It was at this point the older lady is focused on foisting something from the bowels of her comparably enormous Costco grocery cart. Her husband reached into their cart and with one hand grasped what appeared to be 1 or 2 stacked plastic berry crates, blueberries or something like that, and then leaned over the belt and placed them ahead of the belt divider. I saw what happened, and I'm pretty sure the old guy just didn't see where he had dropped them. The cashier is still checking out items for the people next ahead in line, and then reached for the berry crates. I gestured and said out loud, "Are you sure those are your groceries?" And everyone looked at me like I was being weird. A woman in the berry receiver party looked at me, heard what I said, and then looked down to see the berries in the hands of the clerk. The berry crates were then scanned and went into the cart of the folks who had just checked out. Now the older couple ahead of me were next to check out. I came alongside the older couple again as there are 2 receipt verification lines. I asked the older lady again, "Didn't you have some berries or something like that?" And she was just like, "Nope, we didn't." She didn't put off any negative or defensive body language to make me think it was just a reflexive reply. So what the hell happened? By the way, I could tell the berry crate givers and berry crate receivers didn't know each other. With my 2 eyeballs, I saw the older guy take them from his wife and his cart, and I also saw the people ahead of them pay for the berries and depart with them. Story 5. 3 cars driving backwards on carriageway at night. This happened about a week ago, but I can't seem to get it out my head because it's just so puzzling. SQ. It was about 6:30 p.m. at night, and I was sitting at my desk at the window, which looks out onto a busy carriageway. I can see just under a kilometer stretch of the road from my window, and usually the road is full of cars going both ways, until about 1 a.m. where it gets quieter. Very rarely is there no cars on the road, especially during rush hour. Anyway, you get the point. The road is busy. By 6:30 p.m., it was pitch black outside, and occasionally I would look up from my laptop and see the heavy stream of car headlights in the distance. The next time I looked up, the road was completely empty, and this caught my attention because it was rush hour, and it should be busy. Then coming north down the road, heading south, were 3 headlights of 3 cars. It took me a few seconds for it to click, but the headlights were where the brake lights would normally be, at the back of the car. All 3 cars were the same. All 3 cars were driving south, but were facing like they should be driving north, essentially driving backwards. I could tell since I could see the faint outlines of the car under the moonlight, and the faint glow of the red brake lights, which were facing south, where the headlights should be. Them closely because I was so confused until they continued driving to a point where I couldn't see them anymore. The entire time they were driving, the road was empty, and then as soon as they disappeared, the road suddenly filled again with the usual traffic. This is the first time something like this has happened, and I've not seen it since. It was kinda eerie because all 3 cars were driving at the same speed, around 60 miles per hour, and the space between the cars never changed. Here's some explanations I came up with. I first thought it could be a car towing another car, but they were too far apart for this to be the case. And even if this was what was happening, wouldn't the leading car be facing the right way? I wasn't sleep deprived or anything like that. Story 6. Library book disappeared. So I got the book, The Murderer's Ape, through my school library on a Friday. The librarian specifically talked to me about how she liked the book and that it was chosen to be translated to English from Swedish. The period after the next, I realized that I don't have it. No big deal. I'm known for losing items, and my previous period's teacher is known for a mini lost and found near the back. Every Friday, the school emails you any books you have checked out by the end of the day, if you have any. I received no such email. The next day, the book is not in that class. I wanted the library to tell them about me losing the book and the lack of an email, and they have no record of the book. No stand where it was yesterday, and the librarian had no idea what book it was, let alone the minutiae they knew the day before. It has been months, and I have gotten no emails or delayed charges. Clarity edit. It was the same librarian. There was some rightful confusion on the matter. Story 7. Wireless speaker reappears after 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, I was looking for my wireless speaker to sync it with my projector. The last time I had seen it was in the kitchen, so I cleared the counters and the table to see if I could find it. It wasn't there, so I checked every room where I might have used it. I live alone and haven't had anyone visiting in a year, so there's no chance of anyone else using it. I searched again the next day and found nothing, so I stopped looking. Yesterday, I was clearing the table from accumulated junk, and lo and behold, my speaker was right there, in the middle of the table, where I had just removed a receipt from the grocery store. If it had been there before, I definitely would have seen it. The table is a light wood color. The speaker is black. The receipt is white. It would have been visible. Plus, the receipt looked like it was flat on the table, not on top of anything else. Story 8. Favorite jacket gets replaced by an imposter. This just happened a few hours ago. A month ago, I bought a new jacket to wear for the cold winter weather, and also because I live in the PNW, something that will be okay to wear in the rain. I decided on a black Calvin Klein jacket that was all black, had 2 pockets in the usual hand spots, a CK logo on the left arm, and the zipper was on the left side of the jacket instead of the right side. I know that for a fact because every time I would zip up my jacket to go to work, I'd think about how much I dislike the zipper being on the left and not the right. I know that's usually on women's jackets, but look at the comments. Someone found the exact jacket I bought originally, and it is men's. I wore the jacket every day while at work, and I never took it off while at work. It's too cold these days, and I go outside of my work building multiple times a day. None of my coworkers have a Calvin Klein jacket, and they even poked fun at me for it when they saw the brand. So it's established that I never take my jacket off at work, and none of my coworkers also have a Calvin Klein jacket. Keep these 2 things in mind. Tonight I decided to wash the jacket with some other black clothes of mine. I had to remove the things that are always in my pockets at work before I could wash the jacket, which are 1 pack of gum, a pen that is from a unique pen set that only I own at work, and a small travel-sized bottle of cologne that I spray myself with every few hours. So now I've established that I didn't mistakenly take a coworker's jacket because my daily carry items were in the left pocket where they always are. And remember, none of my coworkers have a Calvin Klein jacket. I take the clothes out of the dryer and grab the jacket because my wife wants to go out for dinner. I then get thoroughly confused. This isn't my jacket. This imposter jacket that I pulled out of the dryer has a bright white stripe going down the jacket right next to the zipper. The zipper is on the right side of the jacket. The CK logo that was on the left arm is now a full Calvin Klein logo, and the inside of the jacket is Sherpa lined. My jacket was all black with no white stripes. The zipper was on the left side. The arm logo said only CK, and my jacket was not Sherpa lined. I then have a mini mental breakdown where I question reality. LOL. I called my wife's dad just in case he owns a Calvin Klein jacket and mistakenly left it at my house the last time they were over. And he says he does not own a Calvin Klein jacket. And like I stated before, I had removed my personal items from the pockets before placing them in the washing machine. None of my coworkers have a Calvin Klein jacket. And like I stated before, I never take my jacket off at work. I then looked at the website of the store I bought it from, and my jacket apparently doesn't exist. Only this new Sherpa-lined and right-sided zipper jacket is on the website. This is also, literally, the only big fancy brand clothing item I own. All of my other clothing is cheap stuff from Target or Fred Meyer, so I know I'm not mistaking it for another jacket I own. I bought it about a month ago and wore it every single day. I am so confused. Update. I explained the situation to my coworkers, and they also think that I'm wearing a different jacket. They agree that my original jacket just had a CK on the sleeve and that the zipper was on the left. Story 9. My juicer shrank. There is no explanation for this other than space changed. I have a juicer that sits on my counter. When it's put together, the plunger that pushes food into the juicer sticks up quite a bit. For the past year, I've had to keep the plunger out of the juicer when I'm not using it because it's so tall that I can't open the upper cabinet above the juicer. The plunger would stick up around an inch higher than the bottom of the cabinet, and the cabinet door would bang into it if you tried to open it with the plunger in. Well, I just moved the juicer to thoroughly clean the counter, and when I put it back, the plunger is now lower. The top of the plunger is now an inch lower than the bottom of the cabinet, and I can open the cabinet just fine. I've shown another family member I live with, and she's flabbergasted too. She knew as well as I that the plunger was taller than the cabinets. It's irked both of us for this past year. Well, it's not too tall anymore. Juicers don't normally shrink, nor do installed kitchen cabinets, so the only explanation we can think of is that the fabric of space just shifted, somehow. At least our juicer fits in the space, now. Story 10. These glitches keep happening. I hope you understand what I mean. English is not my first language. A while ago I wrote about one I had with some things I ordered from IKEA. That glitch had a second part, which I preferred not to write about, because it literally made my hair stand on end and I preferred to think that I myself had made a mistake. I spent some time trying not to pay too much attention to certain things, but today's situation is impossible to ignore. I have my computer plugged into a power strip, which has been around for a while and has one free socket left. About a month ago, I decided to buy a new one, because I don't like how this one is placed, so I could put the new one on the computer and the old one in the kitchen, since they gave me a freezer and I needed that extra socket. For X reasons, we couldn't go get the freezer yet, so I haven't changed the power strip yet, and I left the new one on top of some things I have in the kitchen to have it in sight when I change things. It's still packed. I didn't even take it out of the plastic. This morning, my boyfriend was picking up his backpack to go to work, and he moved those things around a bit. There was a bang, and when I looked at the floor, there was the plug packed, so I picked it up to put it back, and there was another plug on top of it, also packed. I screamed out of fright, WTF? My boyfriend, surprised, asks me what's wrong, and I show it to him, still speechless. He tells me, like with the IKEA thing, you must have made a mistake, you must have bought two, you left one covered with things and you forgot. No, I know that's not the case. There are quite a few reasons why I know I wasn't wrong, but one of them is that I bought it in a store where things are quite expensive. The packaging is from that store, but it's very close to my house. Then we had some unexpected expenses, and I know that if I had thought about buying another one, I would never have bought it in that store, because I had to go to the cheap one several times. I'm shocked and bewildered again, and I can't stop wondering. If I wasn't a regular reader of this sub, would I have dismissed this as easily as my boyfriend did, without questioning things as much? Serious question. Do you think that reading this sub makes you more susceptible to seeing glitches that you didn't see before? Story 11. Missing restaurant spoon. On December 17th, 2021, me and my then-girlfriend went to Cheesecake Factory. I remember the exact date because the next day, I proposed to her. We had some leftover cheesecake but had no utensils at the hotel we were staying at, so we decided to take the spoon from the restaurant. As we were leaving the hotel, my fiancé wanted to keep the spoon from the Cheesecake Factory as a memory of that weekend we got engaged. Now, this spoon was bigger and clearly had a different design than all of the spoon we had at home. It was easily distinguishable from all of our utensils. A couple of months later, sometime in 2022, it just disappeared. Me and my fiancé turned our kitchen inside out looking for that spoon. My wife blamed me and said I probably packed it with my lunch and threw it at work. The thing is, I would never take that specific spoon since I knew it was the Cheesecake Factory spoon. I just took the blame and figured maybe I accidentally did take the spoon. We completely forgot about the spoon. That was until about 2 weeks ago. I called my wife after work like I usually do, and she tells me the spoon somehow magically appeared in the utensil drawer. When I got home, I saw the spoon with my own eyes. We have absolutely no idea how the Cheesecake Factory spoon disappeared for about 2 years and just appeared out of thin air. We're baffled at this whole situation. Story 12. Missing earrings. A couple of years ago, I attended a wedding that was a few hours from where I live, so I booked an Airbnb in the area where the wedding was being held and obviously had packed my outfit for the wedding. I brought a few options of jewelry to go with my outfit, and on the day after the wedding when I was leaving, I couldn't find one side of a pair of earrings I had brought with me. I had kept all the jewelry in a small jewelry pouch that was light-colored, so it was very easy to see what was inside it, and even turned it inside out. But it was nowhere to be found, and these earrings were big dangly ones, not little studs that are easy to misplace. Upon leaving the Airbnb, as I was traveling back home, I checked the pouch again, and this time, the other side of the pair was missing too. I thought I was going crazy, and imagined that I had brought the earrings when maybe I had never packed them, but just in case I sent the Airbnb owner a message asking him to let me know if he found my earrings. A few days later, I tend to procrastinate when it comes to unpacking after a trip. I unpacked the jewelry pouch and emptied out the contents to put the rest of the jewelry back into their usual spots, and lo and behold, both earrings that I thought I had lost, or didn't even bring, fell out of the pouch. I still think about it sometimes. Obviously, since I still have those earrings, there was no harm done, but it still bemuses me. Story 13. Random car keys appeared on my sofa after a trip away. Really strange experience. Today, me, my wife, and my kids went to a relative's house, over 2 hours away. My younger brother who lives with us was home alone while we were gone. We were out much of the day and we returned home quite late. Once we got in and kids had settled down, I sat on our sofa and noticed I was sitting on something, so I had a look and it was a pair of car keys I had never seen before. I was perplexed as to where they came from. My first thought was my brother had a friend around and they left them behind, so I asked him, but he said none of his friends had been over. There is no reason for him to lie about it. He has people over all the time, so I 100% don't doubt him. My next thought was my kids bought them back from the house we had visited, so we took a pic and sent it to them and said, sorry, we think our kids took a set of keys from yours, but they replied saying they didn't recognize the keys. My next thought was maybe I got broken into, but absolutely no sign of forced entry or anything missing. So what the hell, where did these keys come from? They weren't there before we left. My wife always likes to tidy up before we go out on a day trip, so she would have noticed them. I have never seen them before, and they don't match any car brand any of my friends or relatives drive. I'm genuinely confused as to where they come from. Story 14. I lost my house key in front of me and I can't find them now. Double-checked my backpack before leaving work for home and my key was inside my bag. I arrive home and I walk to the door. I reach for my bag and get my key out. I swear I saw my key in the bag while standing outside the front door, and it slips from my fingers and I hear it fall onto the ground. I look down around me and I completely can't find the key. I checked under the mat, checked the leaves, there aren't that many leaves, just checked everything around the step and even went further away from the door, and I absolutely can't find my key. I checked my backpack again and emptied everything out, and there is no sign of my key. I checked my pockets and there is no key. I even got help from someone else to help me find them and there is no sign of them. We also used a brush to sweep the leaf but still nothing. This has left me very, very frustrated with myself, and I'm starting to doubt if I ever had my key with me in the first place, even though I could have sworn I had it with me, and even saw myself reach into the bag and pull it out, and then it falling out of my hand and hearing the sound of the key hit what sounded like the concrete step, which is where I was standing on. I have never been so annoyed with myself and at an object, the key in this case. Story 15. Christmas light glitch. This happened last night, so it's fresh on my mind, and the whole family is shook. We went to see famous Christmas lights near us, and when we arrived, we were disappointed. They were not as robust as years past, and the lights that drape across the street from house to house weren't on. We go every year and commented numerous times in the 10 minutes we were there that the lights not being on above the street was weird. As we were leaving, I took a short video for Instagram. I put it on my story, and thought nothing of it. When we got back, my sister-in-law saw the video and pointed out the lights over the street were on. We all said it had to be a glitch, and none of us have another explanation. So bizarre. As you can see in the pic, the lights above the street are on, and we must have talked about it 10 times how they were off and how disappointed we were. Story 16. Disappearance of the grocery store. 3 to 4 years ago, me and my sister went to another city in my home country, and we stayed there for a concert. It was at 11 p.m. or SMTH. We were very hungry, so we went to get some food, but everything was closed except a small grocery store in the middle of the walking street. There were cafes, bistros, etc. next to it, but they were closed OFC. So we bought some snacks and coffee, and the next week when I walked there, it was gone. I remembered the cafe next to it. I plan to check it out on the next time I go there, so I remember the name of it till this day. But the grocery store was like a ghost shop store, which was there for only that night. It was full of stuffs, full of people. BC, everyone bought food from there on that night. BC, everything was closed. There were no sign it would close on the next week, when I went there again. Story 17. They just disappeared. In 2019, I lost my mother to cancer. My stepfather had passed a couple of years earlier, and my mom had his container of ashes at her house. Nothing fancy, they were just in the plastic box they usually come in if you don't buy an expensive urn. After my mom passed, I had to go to her apartment to figure out what I was going to keep and what I would get rid of. I didn't completely finish, because I still had a couple of weeks left to fully empty her apartment. I took my stepdad's ashes home with me that night. About a week later, I got a text from my stepdad's estranged sister asking what I was going to do with her brother's ashes, and if possible, she would like to have them. I told her sure, I'll be finishing up at my mom's place next week, so we planned to meet there, and I would give her the ashes. On a side note, my mother and her never got along. In fact, they pretty much hated each other the whole time she was married to her brother. My stepdad had pretty much decided to stop speaking to her as well about 5 years earlier. The day had come for me to finish up at my mom's, and I made sure I grabbed my stepdad's ashes that I had in a tote bag for easier carrying on the way out. I was meeting a friend who has a truck, so he offered to help by driving me to all get the big things easier. I got to my friend's house, parked on his lawn, it's a very rural area, and grabbed the ashes and my purse, and got out of my car and locked it. We were to be leaving in his truck in about 5 minutes. Decided to put my purse and the box of ashes, which were still in the tote bag, on the hood of my friend's truck so I didn't forget them. He has a really large GMC truck that fits 4, and it was totally safe to put my things up there because there was absolutely no one around to worry about taking them. When it was time to leave, I go to grab my purse and the tote bag on the hood, and only my purse is there. Only myself and my friend were there, no one else. The area is so rural, there aren't sidewalks or people walking down the street ever. Only a small 2-lane road with very light traffic. I never left the vicinity of the truck and was outside near the truck the whole time. We scoured the whole outside area and even looked inside the house even though I knew I didn't go in. My stepdad's ashes had completely disappeared. They were nowhere, not on the truck, not in the truck, and not anywhere under or around it. Upset, I got to my mom's and his sister was waiting there in the parking lot for me. I had to tell her that I seemed to have lost the ashes because they vanished into thin air. Needless to say, she was angry and probably didn't believe me. To this day, they've never showed up. All I can think of is either my mom or my stepdad, somehow, from the other side, decided they didn't want her to have them. I honestly have no other scenario that makes sense. Story 18. Melodic tune late at night. I'm writing this just minutes after it stopped, a couple of minutes ago. We'll say 2:57 a.m. since it's 3:08 as I'm writing this. I finally turned off my phone and went to go to sleep for the night. Barely a minute after I lied down, I begun to hear a melodic tune play out of nowhere. It sounded a little similar to the one from Frozen 2 that pesters Elsa, minus the high-pitched notes. At first, I thought I was hearing things. Everyone in my house is asleep and all Bluetooth speakers are turned off, so it isn't those. But my curiosity got the better of me, so I got up to see where it was coming from. I leaned closer to my radiator, and the noise grew ever so slightly louder. Though my headboard is pushed up against the radiator in my room, and when I'd lie down, it wasn't nearly as audible. I figured it was coming from the living room, which is underneath my room, so I went down to take a look. Everything was normal, but I could still hear the tune. Again, I leaned close to the living room radiator, and it got louder. I didn't look any further than that, and just decided to go back upstairs and into my room. Once I got in my room, however, the tune stopped just as I entered. It's now 3:16, and I haven't heard it once during the time I've been writing this post. Now, I know there's a chance it could have been the radiators, but I've never once heard a radiator make a sound like that in my entire life. So I'm curious, am I hearing things or was it just the radiator? Any and all feedback/info would be appreciated. Story 19. The time I lost my jewel in Eureka, California, and found it in a hollowed-out redwood miles away. Not looking for judgment on nicotine use, please. My friend and I were avid mountain bikers, and we did an awesome road trip to Northern California this summer. Outside of Eureka, there is a cool trail system called Lax Creek. We stayed there a few days and rode the trails. Anywho, I lost my jewel on a ride. A jewel I had laser engraved with my initials and a unique design. A few days later, we found ourselves in the Grove of the Titans in the Redwoods, pretty sure, or another grove greater than 100 miles away. Along the path there was a hollow stump with a small, crouch-in entrance, which I went into. Glancing around, I noticed a jewel perched upon the interior of the stump. I picked it up, to discover that this was my jewel, that I had lost, no less than 100 miles away, laser engraved with the pod as I had left it. This, being a complete mindfuck, made me quit vaping, but I still wonder to this day the mechanism behind the forest borrowing my jewel, though other drugs or mind-altering substances were involved, will likely be my life's greatest mystery. Edit. Clarification. No way my friend could have possibly been involved. It fell or manifested its way out of my pocket on a ride in which he was in front of me. In the grove, I was the first to enter the tree. I had eyesight of him the whole time. Second cool detail I should have included. It was placed inside the tree, right side up, about eye level, on a small ledge in the bark. What was also strange is the grove in question is a busy, famous grove in the Redwoods. Why I was the one to stumble upon my own jewel is surprising. Also of note, just in case somehow a stranger was responsible for leaving it there if I dropped it on the ride. Lax Creek is a lonely place. We saw one person the 3 days we were there, and if I had dropped it on trail, these are fast-riding DH trails, bike only. Bizarre if someone were to find it. Story 20. Pancakes rearranged themselves. This happened a number of years ago, and I had mostly forgotten about it until I started reading this subreddit. On Sundays, I would go to our local IHOP and get individual breakfasts for the family, 4 members. On one such trip, the routine was uneventful. The order was called in, and I arrived at the restaurant to pick it up. There was usually a 10 to 15 minute wait. They were always busy on Sunday with after-church groups going out to eat, and this day was no exception. I was given my order, paid for it, and then proceeded to return home. I got home, and we began separating the breakfast containers to place on the table. The table was adjacent to the kitchen area, separated by a counter that jutted out toward the middle of the room between the kitchen and dining area. Both are open, with no wall between them. Just the counter. Each of the breakfast containers were removed from the order bags and placed on this counter before moving them to the table. Since we usually didn't immediately eat the pancakes that were included with the breakfasts, I took each pair of them from the 4 breakfast containers, 8 pancakes in total, and placed them all in a single container, closed it, and left it on the counter. My wife saw me do this. Once that was done, I sat down with my family members and began to eat. About 20 minutes later, after we had finished eating, we got up and began picking up the to-go containers. As I turned around to the counter, getting ready to put the single container of pancakes away, I stopped in my tracks. The 8 pancakes, which I had combined 20 minutes before, were all back in their individual containers. Considering we were all at the table, and the pancakes were less than 5 feet away and directly behind me on the counter, there was no explainable way to how they were all moved back into their individual containers. There were no unexpected sounds. It was mid-morning, so there was plenty of light in the room, and there were no extra people in the house. To this day, we cannot explain how this happened. 21. The reappearing ring. This happened a few years ago and has become so infamous in my and my husband's relationship because it legitimately freaks my husband out to the point where we can't even talk about it besides referring to it as the ring. One Saturday morning, I was finishing up getting ready for work and went to go put my everyday jewelry on, wedding ring, college class ring, watch, when I realized my college ring was missing from its usual home on my nightstand. This is a very special and sentimental item to me, so I was a little panicked when I couldn't find it after a few minutes. I called my husband in to help me look for it, and we proceeded to turn the house upside down for it. He double-checked everywhere I looked, and we scoured both our bedroom and rest of the house for it, to no avail. I was starting to run out of time to make it to work, so I had to leave without finding it. I returned home after my 8-hour shift, proceeded to drop my bag at the door, and headed straight to the bedroom to change clothes. The second I walked in the bedroom, I saw my ring. It was sitting right on my nightstand, in perfect, plain view. I got so excited and assumed my husband had found it for me while I was gone and had placed it there. I figured he was trying to surprise me with it since he didn't text me to let me know he found it, so I sat on the bed and waited for him to walk in the room so I could thank him. As soon as he walked in the room, I excitedly exclaimed, "You found it!" He stared at me with a confused look and said, "What are you talking about?" I pointed to the ring, still on my nightstand, and said, "My ring! You found it! Where was it?" He got an even more confused look on his face and said, "I didn't find it. Where did you find it?" I started rolling my eyes at this point, thinking he was fucking with me, and said something like, "Oh, come on, where was it?" We went back and forth for a while over who found the ring, until I realized my husband actually wasn't kidding at all. He was genuinely confused and thought I was fucking with him. His face became more and more serious, and we both stared at each other, understanding that neither of us had actually found it. My husband, a man of science, began going over every possibility of how I could have found it when I got home, placed it on my nightstand, and then forgot I did all of that. I explained to him I had left the house without either of us finding it, literally hadn't been home all day, and had just returned less than 15 minutes ago, where I hadn't done anything except drop my bag and walk into the bedroom, where it was sitting there waiting for me. To this day, we don't have a single possible explanation for it. He refuses to believe anything other than the idea that I somehow found it and then immediately forgot I did that, which is absolutely impossible. How could I completely forget both finding it and placing it on my nightstand? Who? There's no way. But he refuses to believe in ghosts or anything not with a rational explanation, and I don't have a single other logical possibility for its return. It's been years, and we still can't talk about it without getting completely spooked about the whole thing. And while I don't have a rational explanation, I do have a wishful thinking one. My grandpa, my hero, had passed away a month before. Was he looking out for me? I'll never know. Story 22. Vanishing Plane. This was in the 90s when I was in college. I had no classes one afternoon and I went home early. It was a perfect September day, beautiful weather, and not a cloud in the sky. My walk home from the bus stop was about half a mile. I lived off campus in a residential neighborhood that was mostly empty during the day when people were at work and school, giving me plenty of time for quiet reflection. So it was notable when about a block from my house I crossed paths with a guy raking leaves in his front yard. Just then, I heard a screeching noise in the sky. I looked up and saw what looked like a passenger jet followed by a contrail. Nothing unusual about it other than this sound. It was like 10x, a normal passing jet noise, and it grew so loud it seemed to fill the air down to the ground and whirl around us. It was crazy. Then, in an instant, the plane vanished right before my eyes, and the noise abruptly stopped, without an echo. A boom. Nothing. Silence. The contrail just hung there, slowly dissipating. The guy had stopped raking and was looking up in the sky too. He looked back down at me and I could tell by his face that we'd seen and heard the exact same thing. Then, he shrugged his shoulders and went back to his task. I passed silently and went home. That's it. Story 23. Canned dip regenerated. So I'm known for my amazing crab dip. Last night I made a batch and put it in 2 disposable loaf pans. I pulled them out of the oven and promptly sealed one with foil to share with neighbor. Then I enjoyed some from the other pan with fresh pretzel bites I had just purchased. I then sealed it, aluminum foil, and put it next to the other pan in the fridge. Tonight I wanted a snack, so I pulled the pan out of fridge, only to discover the crab dip was not touched. So I pulled the other pan out. Sure, the first pan was the one for the neighbor. I opened that pan, it too was untouched. I blinked and then stood back. What the hell is happening? Those pans were just like they were, as if I'd just pulled them from the oven. Neither had been touched. I thought I was crazy and imagined that I ate some the night before. Now, my tub of pretzel nuggets had been opened and resealed with 1/4 of them gone. How did this happen? For those that don't know, when you make crab dip, the top has a layer of cheese on top. The cheese was unbroken on both pans. It's not possible. I'm still shaken up. Story 24. Car wheels. Was at a red light with another car in front of me, what looked to be an Oldsmobile, and another car on my right. Light turned green. The Oldsmobile accelerated slowly and the 2 rear tires rolled away from the vehicle, as in the driver's side rear tire, disconnected from the vehicle, and continued to roll at an angle. Car drove off like nothing happened and had magically still had 2 regular rear wheels. The vehicle didn't even change its height or drop/raise due to losing wheels. It's as if someone glued an additional tire to each side and detached. Then they slowly lost momentum and tumbled over. I thought I was going crazy, until I saw the driver in the lane right of me had to swerve out of the way of the tire that fell over and blocked their lane. Story 25. Jar of honey resealed itself after I ate from it. I think I experienced my first glitch today. Someone sent me a food basket as a holiday gift. Inside, there was a jar of honey. I love honey, so I immediately opened it and ate a spoonful. Later that night, I went to grab the honey again. I twist off the lid, and there's a protective seal on it, the kind that you have to peel off the first time you open it. I don't know if I'm losing it or if this is some kind of strange glitch, but there's no way I could have missed that seal when I opened it the first time. It was definitely gone before. Story 26. Notebook disappeared. This happened to me a couple of years ago and I think about it a lot. I took my notebook down to the beach with me to write. It was winter, and the beach was so quiet I didn't see another person there the entire time. I had the notebook, my phone, and one blanket to sit on. I wrote a few pages and set it down next to my phone. Now, after a while, I looked away to take a picture of the ocean for maybe a minute, then went to grab the book again to go home, and it was gone. Bear in mind, it wasn't windy, and my blanket wasn't blowing around at all. I searched super thoroughly, shook my blanket, and checked all my pockets. I even roamed around a good 200 meters on each side of where I sat and found nothing. Dug holes in the sand trying to find it, and used my phone torch. It was literally nowhere. I looked for about half an hour then gave up. I was so confused and freaked out. I remember crying, walking back to my car because I just couldn't understand how it disappeared. Story 27. Popcorn Girl Disappearance. This happened last summer, and it still puzzles my wife and I to this day. So the two of us were out around mid-afternoon, walking around the downtown area of our town. The street we were on was straight, with only a few shops to one side of us, the road on the other, and across the road, there was a large field with some people roaming about. As we walked, a girl carrying a tray of popcorn came towards us. She was wearing a teal shirt, black pants, and an apron. There was a logo on her shirt, and it was for the local shop that sold snacks and such. She offered us a sample of the popcorn, and I took it, thanking her as she walked past the two of us. My wife ate a piece and immediately went to turn to compliment the girl on the popcorn, but she was gone. We were dumbfounded. Eating the popcorn and turning took maybe 10 to 20 seconds. She wasn't further up the road. She wasn't crossing the road. The two shops that were next to us were closed. She wasn't in the field across the way. My first thought was that she ran, but her tray was full of sample cups and would have spilled if she took off, and there was nothing on the ground. There were no alleyways she could have slipped into either. To me, it seems like she simply glitched out of reality. Story 28. Saw a woman disappear right in front of me. Another glitch happened today. Math lectures just finished. Ironically, matrices as a subject, and I went to go to the bathroom. After I finished, I went to go to my car, which was parked directly in front of the building. On my way out, I had to go through a long corridor with windows on the side, from which I could see my car on the left. When I was halfway through the hallway, I noticed some women opening the secretary's office door and walking to the exit, which is on the left side of the hallway. I noticed her opening the door and going through. About 10 seconds later, I opened the door to go to my car, but there was no one left. After that, I walked fast to the street, looked right and left, but no one was there. Besides, not enough time had passed that the women could have gone there. She had to be somewhere on the way to the street, in front of the building. Nope, no one there. I have experienced this kind of things before, and they really freak me out. Is it a glitch? Which kind of glitch? Does this avatar, the women, still remains conscious but isn't visible to some people? Is she teleported away and thinks that she was just dreaming or something? Or maybe it's not a glitch but I somehow misremembered? Or like the man in the high castle, travelers through realities? This sounds very odd, and I won't consider myself crazy. I am just telling what I saw. This happened about 45 minutes ago, and I thought, I could write it in this Reddit, and maybe I get an answer. Do you know what could have happened? Story 29. Water fell on my face while I was browsing my phone in bed. Here I was at night, lying in the dark on my bed, quietly browsing my phone with the only light in the room being the glow on my face from the screen. Splash. I felt about 300 milliliters of water land my face and chest. What the fuck? I instinctively whispered loudly, thinking I was under attack, but courteously not trying to wake anyone up. I was not. Once I had flicked on my phone flashlight, I had seen there was nobody. Looking down again at my soaked bedsheets and wiping my face. I was still alone in pin-drop silence. Surely if somebody was there, I would have heard them. Besides, anyone who has gotten used to the acoustics of their bedroom can hear a penny drop me. I heard absolutely nothing. I have absolutely no explanation for it to this day. The Matrix got into a water fight with me, and currently it is 1-0 to it. Why couldn't it have been gold? But with full respect to the Matrix, I'm grateful it wasn't acid. Story 30. Just found 2 of the same exact skirt in my closet. WTF. I have had my skirts, about 10, just layered hanging on some old hangers for the last few years and finally decided to reorganize them by hanging them from clips. As I'm doing this, I realize I have 2 of the exact same skirt? I admit I don't wear these pencil skirts often anymore since I work from home, but what the hell? Wouldn't I have noticed at some point in the last several years that I have 2 of the exact same one? I don't remember when or where I bought this, but I've definitely had it for a long time. I did see a post on this sub in the last tilde month about objects duplicating, so not sure I was primed to notice this, but I'm seriously freaked out. I've never had anything like this happen, especially with an article of clothing, ever. They're the exact same size and everything. Story 31. Airport time glitch. This happened yesterday at my nearest domestic airport. I'm still quite confused about it. It was around 8 a.m., and we had a relatively early flight to another city in my country. My mom and I were waiting in the small seating area outside our gate. Anyway, I really needed to use the bathroom, so I wandered around for a minute and quickly found it. Here's where it starts. As I walked into the bathroom, I was pretty desperate. My bladder was killing me. I went in, used the bathroom, which probably took about 2 minutes, and then washed my hands. I didn't use the airdryer to dry them. I usually just shake them off and go, so keep in mind my hands were still visibly wet. As I was leaving through the hallway leading back to the gates, I suddenly needed to pee again, desperately, as if I hadn't just gone. I turned back, went to the bathroom again, and this time, my hands were entirely dry by the time I finished. At this point, I was super confused. I dried my hands with paper towels and left. From then on, everything was normal. Even now, I'm still so puzzled thinking about it. It was trippy. For context, I'm writing this because it just happened, and I want to make sure I don't mess up any details or blur the lines. I'm young, have no health issues or bladder problems, or anything like that. If anyone has a rational explanation, please let me know. I feel absolutely crazy. Story 32. Duplicating panties? In 2007, I had just graduated college and was splurging on clothes with my first paycheck from a real job. I'm guessing that is why I remember so many details about making the purchase of the magical underwear. Victoria's Secret was having its semi-annual sale, and I took advantage of the 5 for $25 sale. I bought 5 pairs of pink panties. They were plain black, plain purple, plain hot pink, rainbow stars, and a rainbow striped pair. I am no longer in possession of the 2 rainbow pairs, one having been thrown away, the other having been stolen by an ex. I do, however, possess the other, what I thought to be 3 pairs, but is now actually 4. I'm confused. I am in possession of 2 identical pairs of black panties, and I know for a fact I only ever bought one. The only reason that I noticed it is 2 weeks ago, I was putting away laundry and came across one pair and realized that I was wearing the pair that I thought I had. Now, I even checked the underwear I was wearing while folding, and I was, indeed, in possession of 2 pairs where there should only be one. I bought the underwear almost 20 years ago. I know I haven't bought any more pairs. There aren't any other women who live in my house for them to belong to. I have no idea for how long I have actually had 2 pairs of these panties and not known it. If it weren't for me wearing them on laundry day, I may have never even known about this glitch in the Matrix. ETA. I realize that that's a long time to hold on to underwear, but if there's nothing wrong with them, I don't see the point in getting rid of them, lol. Story 33. Repeating time glitch with a possible explanation. Last Tuesday, I had been at the co-op the next suburb over picking up a parcel and getting some food. It went ages. I went to the bus stop as usual, but the bus was delayed and it was windy and rainy. There's a shelter, but the rain was blowing in my face. I decided to get a taxi home. While I was in the taxi, I noticed we were approaching a roundabout I was familiar with. We crossed the usual burn, got onto the roundabout, and I saw the block of flats next to the road get closer. I looked at my phone for about 10 to 15 seconds. Now, I look up again, and we're approaching the block of flats again, from the same angle. I was highly confused. We didn't go around the roundabout again, because I would have felt it. And besides, the driver would have had to reverse slightly back onto the bridge. We didn't stop, because again, I would have felt that, and I would have heard the engine stop. We were definitely going at normal speed towards the roundabout when I started to look at my phone. The possible explanation is this. About an hour and a bit later, I noticed a visual interruption, round rather than the usual lightning bolt I get, a stabbing pain behind my left eye, and growing nausea. Yep, a migraine. I've had them for over 20 years, and they're a pain. Literally. Half an hour after that, I was spewing and needing to lie in my bed in the dark. The weird thing is, assuming the migraine was the cause, how does that work, physically? Did my brain delude me into thinking I was looking at blue sky on my phone? Background info. I think it was about 4:15 p.m. It was late dusk, so mostly dark outside. I'm diabetic, but my blood sugar was fine at the time. I hadn't taken any sumatriptan at the time, but considering what happened later, I wish I had. Story 34. Cat upstairs appears downstairs. I'm not sure if this goes here, but this just happened. My cat is being really playful and hyperactive for some reason, just running around, meowing loudly, hissing sometimes, and playing with whatever is on the floor. She's also been running up and down the stairs for no reason. I've been watching her while I relax on the couch because it's really not like her to be this hyper. So I have my eyes on her, doing all these shenanigans, and I watch her race up the stairs. She has long claws, so when she runs, either up or down, you'll hear her claws on the carpet. Every single time I watch her go upstairs meowing loudly and all, and then she just stops. I haven't taken my eyes off the top of the stairs. I can't see her from where I am, but I know she ran up there BC. I watched her. Out of nowhere, she meows and comes around the couch looking at me. She's downstairs now. I have no idea how she did that or what happened, but I kept my eyes on the top of the stairs and did not look away. BC. I was waiting for her to come back down. There's no other way to appear where she did without coming down the stairs first. And even if I did happen to look away, I would have heard her claws on each step, which I didn't. It's silent in my house, so it's not like music would have covered it. I'm super tripped out. This isn't the first time one of our cats, who we've brought upstairs, have magically appeared downstairs though. When I was little, I was told by my parents to bring Lotus, a different cat, upstairs. She'd been in the office for a while and was batting at the curtained windows to get out. I took her upstairs and set her in her room down the hall, shutting the light off and closing the door. I come back down and finish eating. Then, I see, at the office window, the curtains moving. My entire family stops and stares. BC. They'd seen me carry her up. My dad opens the door and Lotus walks out. I remember running upstairs because I did lock her up. But the door down the hall is wide open and the light is on, which, I might add, wasn't like that at all even before I put Lotus up there. We keep the doors closed and the lights off at all times. So even if I imagine taking the cat up, the door and light would still be closed and off. It absolutely baffled my family, and I still think about it to this day. I don't know if this is the same sort of thing happening again, but I definitely feel it glitched somehow. Thoughts?